Perhaps the most colourful introduction slide yet, Rob Izzard and Stars for Schools.
So I apologise before I start. There's very little raw science in this, but it's all very relevant to Peter and his help for me and a lot of people in this room over the years. So I also apologise, this slide is incorrect. The grass is green. Oops. I haven't seen it that way for a while, but there is still water flowing in the river in Guildford, but that's the money of the bankers there pays for that. So it's okay. So let's start here. I mean, just to get an idea, how many people in this room run stellar evolution codes? Probably, that's probably more than I will ever see in any other room. So that's fantastic. So stellar evolution it's a complicated thing, right? So I did a search on Google, as you do when you're writing these talks, and I got some equations for that. I mean, and there's a crucifying circle there at the bottom, just because there's typos. But these are the equations that everybody here has solved for many years, and of course some extra ones like chemistry, hydro, all this other stuff. That's fine. And you get plots like this one, which is temperature against mass coordinate, or something like that, from your stellar models, okay? And that's all well and good, but how can we communicate this to people who don't really understand mathematics? It's a challenge, right? It's really a challenge. So we can all do this, but they can't. This is another reason that this is difficult. And this, I think, Peter, is actually your original code. It might be Onno's. Onno, was this yours? Is this equation of state code? I'm not sure. This was from Twin, so it's 20 years old, but it's still. Does anyone know what the hell this does? No, because there's no comments and nobody knows. So that's fine. It clearly works, but I don't know what it does. And this is also a problem when you're trying to get people to use codes, so it's a bit of an issue. And I should say, I'm not picking on Peter's code here. You go look at Mesa, it's tens of thousands of lines like this, no comments at all. So it's a challenge, okay? It's a challenge. Now, Peter wrote this code called Twin. Do you still maintain Twin? Is that?
I would if I could get a FORTRAN compiler to work.
Ah, in which case, you need to use Averitt Klebeck's form of Twin, which is commented. Modern FORTRAN works with the compiler. I can build it, so it works brilliantly. And I should thank Onno for hiring Averitt, which got this done, which is great. Now, Twin is fantastic. It's like Peter's code. It runs fast. It doesn't require too much CPU, which for those of us who are cheap, that's good. So I've been using the Utrecht version of that because I was postdoc there back in 2005, back when they still had Astro there. And it's very sad, I know. But it's documented, it's human readable, and it's well tested because Averitt put loads of new features in at the time, which meant that we could use it quite simply. It's fantastic. But it's still all run on the command line, which means it rules out most human beings from ever using it. And it's all hand-hacked input files, which was fine for us, but not for them. So it's a big learning curve. Now, back in 2005, I got sick. I went to Heidelberg for the first time. Beautiful place. Sorry, people that were there. I got bronchitis off one of the local kids. It was bloody cold as well, unlike today. So and it did look like that. It was great. But I then moved on to Switzerland, where I was staying with my then in-laws. And the good thing about the in-laws was they were pretty wealthy because the father-in-law was the ex-president of Philip Morris. Dodgy cash, and his wife liked her cigarettes, which is great when you've got bronchitis in the next bloody room. You can't breathe. It's just horrendous. So I locked the door, and I got bored. And I was like, what can I do? What can I do? And I said, I'm going to come up with a solution to this problem of the hacked config files and actually make a bit of software we can use to graphically interact with stellar evolution codes. And that's Window to the Stars. It's a web browser, essentially, to the stars. And it runs Peter's code. And I remember writing to you at the time and saying, could we use your code and distribute it? And you said yes. Pioneer in the open source revolution. Fantastic. Absolutely superb. But you can do things like this. You can make your HR diagrams for multiple stars. You can do all kinds of stuff with it. You can set all the parameters and run it. You can save models and bits of models and all kinds of the stuff that you can do by hand normally. But it's a good way to do it. Now, I wrote this because I was bored. I didn't write it to do outreach and things like that, but that's what came next. So I got in touch with the people at, well, originally New Astronomy because it was a new journal at the time. I thought I could get away with getting a paper in there. But also, this is the paper from Astronomy and Geophysics, the Royal Astronomical Society magazine. And they're great because they do free articles in color, which back then was a big thing. Otherwise, you'd have to pay hundreds of pounds, which I didn't have. So we got a great article in there, and that's probably the most beautiful article I've ever written, which is great. But then we decided, well, we can use this for teaching. I don't know, I'm guessing John's not still drinking online. He uses it in Monash to do the labs there, or he did until recently. I think they still do. I know it's been used in Heidelberg because I got an email from someone there last year who was using it. We used it in Bonn quite a lot as well. Sydney used it as well for undergraduate teaching. And of course, it fits perfectly because it's quick, it's a very fast code, it's not too heavy on the resources, so you don't need a fantastic machine. And we all know undergraduate labs, the PCs are crap. So you need something that runs on something that is not high-end, high-spec CPU. So Mather isn't so great for that for most of them. But these are some of the comments we got. Would love to explore more. Fantastic, that's exactly what you want. A really mighty instrument, I really like that. It was a lot of fun, it was great. And the lab course helped me understand stellar evolution, which was superb. We did chat a lot about whiskey in England because most people had never been here, but I had to tell them the whiskey didn't come from England, but well, not the good one anyway. But this went down really well, and I don't know if they still teach with this in Bonn. They did until a couple of years ago. So the other thing that was interesting, though, that really piqued my interest was I got an email from a high school in Wisconsin where they were using this software. They just downloaded it off my website. They were using this to teach 12, 13-year-olds. I thought, that's crazy. What are you doing? You can't do that. But they were, and I was very impressed. I wish I could find this email. It's somewhere in a deleted mailbox from years ago. But we've been using it kind of for that age group by doing some public outreach events. So at the top I've got, that was back when I started in Surrey, we got a couple of the students there, and Gio Miru, some of you may know, who was a postdoc there. And we took this out, we went to the Royal Society in London, we did the local Dark Matter Day. I mean, we didn't do anything with dark matter, but we were still popular, so it was fine. And that went down really well. World Space Week we do every year in the High Street, for example, which is superb. But also here, we had a Window to the Stars desk, which sat out there for many years. I think it disappeared during COVID. We should campaign to get it back. I think you can see Holly here. She's doing a great job helping people. And I remember when I started it, the outreach people here had zero enthusiasm for it, possibly negative. And it turned out it was extremely popular because it rains quite a lot. Weird that. And the kids love it, actually, which is also great to see. Now we thought, okay, so next thing to do is to get this into schools and do it properly in schools. There are problems in schools, one of which is a security problem. And this is quite serious because they don't like running any software that is not written by Microsoft. And I mean that, they don't. They won't do it. Maybe Acrobat or something, but that's it. And because this runs on Linux, the way I write it, it runs on Linux, so that's a problem. So we found solutions to that, though. We have two main solutions. One is to run it on a Raspberry Pi, which is, we'll come back to that in a bit, and the other one's to run it on a virtual machine. Both of those you can do quite easily now, which is fantastic. So, but it's a little bit of work, so you do need to support the school if you're going to do this, but it's not too bad. Now, when I started in Surrey, we had Heather Campbell join us, who many of you here know. She did her, was it a PhD, I think she did here? PhD, postdoc here. And she was our outreach officer, and she put me in touch with the local school, which is the Lady Eleanor Horace School, which is an all-girls school in southwest London. It's a private school, quite wealthy. Southwest London, that's what happens there. But the great thing was they had a teacher called Andy, or Mr. Britain, of course. I've got to get it right when the kids are around, otherwise I get in trouble. He's their coordinator of science and technology sort of outreach stuff. And look at all the things he's taken them to. You know, they've gone to CERN schools, they've done moon rock exhibitions, they do space sounds. It's fantastic. They've even been to Dungeness, which is not far from where I grew up, so it might explain a lot. But it's so he's a wonderful guy, and he's so enthusiastic about things like this. And that I cannot say how important it is to have someone supporting a project that has enthusiasm. It's really key for something like this. But the students there, they do these things, and they do them after school as well, which is great. But then what happened? the evil virus came along about 3 weeks later, after we were about to do it, and that kind of put a bit of a damper on things. Fortunately, I had lots of very bored students at home, and in dorms, locked in dorms at that point, who were keen to help. So Rahul on the left here and Savannah on the right, they both did projects, sort of undergraduate projects with me on this. And Natalie, where's Natalie? Natalie's up there. And Armin, who's my other PhD student, they worked very hard to help go through all the documentation with me. So I just want to say thank you to them. But what I did was to design something for 15, 16, 17-year-olds, because I thought, well, that wasn't so long ago for me. I can probably remember roughly what mathematics they did then, so I can make something that is at the right level. And I had a guest editor for the first 6 months of the lockdown. She was great, I should say. Wonderful bilingual skills there. We've got a document which is about a 50-page document. It's filled with all kinds of exercises and stuff. So in the course, we have an introduction and a stellar project section. Now, the introduction, of course, is how to use the software, a bit about the physics. They've never seen a differential equation, so you can't do that, but that's fine. We put in some of the physics and the mathematics, and it works very well. But the key to it is having these 6 projects. There's more now, but we started with 6 projects, which are simple enough things that they can go and make a stellar track and then compare it to a globular cluster and see how old it is, which is something most of us have done. So you can do that now with a few clicks of the mouse, rather than having to do it through a lot of technical details. And of course, there's also that this is the first time they've ever done projects like this, so there's reporting as well. So when they report these things, they learn skills in that. Now, I had to be very careful. I went for 15 to 18-year-olds because I can remember that. I can't go any younger, but that's fine. But what I knew was no calculus, okay? That makes it difficult, really makes it difficult. But we did mix it with a bit of Python code, and you might think that's too advanced, but apparently not. The students love it, and in fact they loved it because that allowed them to do a bit of physics, a bit of mathematics, and a bit of computing, and realize why they're doing computing and why they're doing mathematics, because they had no idea. They were just doing it for the exam. This shows them there are reasons, and good ones. So we had 6 students to start with. It's just a trial. It runs in parallel to their normal class. It's like an after-school club, that kind of thing. And we did everything to start with on Teams and Zoom and things like that. And the great thing is I ended up having conversations with students in cars while they were coming to and from school, which I've never done before. It was an education for me. And we had virtual meetings with either me or one of my students, usually Savannah. She was great. And we catch up and stuff like that. And the way we did everything was to have them run it on VirtualBox at home, or we'd give them a Raspberry Pi. And Raspberry Pis are, this big. They're tiny. But they're big enough in terms of CPU to run Peter's code with no problem. Now, the feedback we got at the end of this, after they'd been through the whole thing, was really positive. And it wasn't perfect, of course, and it never is. They said the Python coding was one of the best bits, because they got to link all the different bits of science together, which they've never done. Now, and the mathematics is not too hard. You might think that's where they'll fall down, but it's not, which was interesting for me. One of the challenges, though, is trying to get this to other schools. We discovered one of the challenges is mental rather than anything else. You have to persuade the teachers there that they can do this. They have the resources, they have the time. They just don't have, they've never done it before, so they feel a bit nervous doing it, which was a bit weird. Anyway, so what are we doing next? Okay, this summer I've been working with Andy to extend this to 11 to 15-year-olds, which is younger, more difficult, but he thinks he can do it. And so I've left that in his hands, and I'll edit the work, but that's all I can really do. We need to extend to more schools. So if anyone has a local school that your kids are at and you want to try this, put me in touch with the teachers. I'd be very happy to. We have people to support it, so we can do this. I applied to STFC for money to get this program going, and they said, yeah, sure, we love it. It's really great, but you have to do the program before you actually get the money. Hence the chicken and egg. Typical STFC, but the Royal Society have been far more supportive and are going to give us a bit of cash to get this together in another half dozen schools by hopefully early next year, which will be fantastic. So I just wanted to say thank you, particularly to Peter. looking young there. In the software, on the last panel of the software, there was a photo of you. There is now this one. The original one was you with the big cigars. I had to change it to send it into the schools. I'm sorry about that. I know it's a bit too woke, perhaps, but I want to thank Avert as well, and maybe Onno can pass that on, because I haven't seen him in too long. And all the people, Holly and Tom, of course, who's not here, he's working, but all the other students that have helped me as well, and particularly to Andy, who has been fantastic. So, thank you. I'm sorry there's no science, but it's, you know,
Excellent. Thibault.
I just see UAD in the podcast, or you have some...
yeah, because I worked there after I worked in Utrecht. So I must have written some of the software there where I was paid for. But they didn't pay for anything. It was all paid for by the EU. So you know, rest in peace, EU. Yeah.
Are you aware that Robert Cannon did something?
Yes, the Cantonout. Cantonout. This was the dodgy company that he and Chris and Natanzio put together to make this into a commercial product.
Okay, I didn't know that bit.
Ah, yeah, indeed. Well, you've got to finance the dinners somehow, right? So, that's, but Cantonout did exist when we started, but then it disappeared, and the website disappeared too. So I don't know what happened to that. So I did speak with Robert about it, but he couldn't remember either. So.
What is the link to this project website and whatever? I would be very interested to try it.
I would just search for Window to the Stars and my name on Google. You'll find it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the easiest way, because the link it's a typical university link, so it's complicated. Just search for Window to the Stars and my name, and you'll find it. No problem. Or I can send it to you later on Facebook or something. That's fine. Yeah.
So if you manage to get the project out and get some funding, would it be a plan to do it in other languages as well?
I'm glad you asked that. I was going to ask for volunteers to translate. I was going to ask Philip, but you know, are you technically retired now? Soon though, right? So you've got plenty of time coming up. It would be wonderful. I mean, the thing is that my German and my French are not good enough to do this, so I would need somebody who understands the technical words to do it. But there is nothing in this that would stop it being translated. Absolutely nothing.
I imagine my local observatory, they do a lot of outreach, like
Yep.
in schools and everything, to
Sure.
be very interested.
Absolutely.
Whether it's Dutch or French.
All we need is someone to translate it. That's it. And the software I write, so I can easily show you how to do that. It's very easy. So yeah, no problem at all.
Good.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you very much again.
Thank you.